Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 143 as England take on Wales in Cardiff in the second of their World Cup warm-ups, and we're joined by guest listener Billy. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. It's obviously a huge day. It's the first of our live pods, our semi-live pods. We obviously missed last week. But as you know, we're obviously missing Dan again. We couldn't let another live pod slip by. So we have a long-time listener and fan of the pod, Billy, joining us today. Thank you so much, Billy, for joining us. This is massively appreciated by us. And who knows, maybe Dan is in for a little competition. And since he's not here to defend himself, anything goes.
Yeah, well, considering he's an East Grinstead boy and I'm an Eastbourne boy, we are better than them naturally. So he needs to be looking over his shoulder, I think.
So it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Now, Billy, you will be better known to some of our listeners as BudgieJointed. You've obviously reached out to us on a number of occasions, written us some pretty compelling reviews. Really appreciate those. You mentioned in one of your messages that you were looking to keep your real name under wraps, concerned about your teammates referring to you as King Noors. Now you've hit the glittering heights of media supremacy that is the England Rugby Pod. Do you feel like you might turn that around?
Yeah, to be honest, I think with the whole Eastbourne and East Grinstead thing, they would have clocked who it was anyway. So I thought I best just get ahead of it.
Get out in front of it, exactly. And, own it. Yeah. Well, they're all looking up to you now, of course, because this is the pinnacle of rugby punditry. But yeah, look, really appreciate you joining us because with Dan obviously tied up with work. Quite why he decided that waiting until the World Cup starts was the right time to get himself a new job. I don't know, but there it is. And of course, you got to pay the bills. So great to have you on board. I think, look, we can obviously talk lots about this game. Lots of stuff's going on. But before we crack on with discussing what we can expect to see a little bit later on, this is our first live pod of the World Cup. So it only seems right that we kick things off with a bit of inspiration. So before we crack on, have a bit of this.
This is the one. It's coming back for Johnny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. Yes! It's up. It's over. He's done it. Johnny Wilkinson is England's hero yet again. And there's no time for Australia to come back. England have just won the World Cup.
Now, I think we are probably ready. First up, McConaughey, yeah. Obviously, we've all been looking forward to seeing him get his first sort of run out in an England shirt. He's been a bit of a sort of an unexpected call-up from Eddie. One season, obviously, in the Premiership, come from sevens. And today was going to be the day. We're going to get that opportunity to see, why is this call being made? And was he going to be another kind of Willie Hines? And were we all going to kind of turn around at the end and be, makes sense now. He's injured again. Bit of muscle strain, I think it is, and Watson gets the start ahead of him. Disappointed?
Yeah, I wanted to see him in an England shirt. I've kind of got two different thoughts on McConaughey. One is that either Eddie Jones has been practicing some witchcraft and he's brought him in the squad to sort of take on all the injuries that Manu Tuilagi would normally pick up, nice. And that he's just going to be used as sort of injury fodder. Or that he's so good that he doesn't want to give anyone a look at him before the World Cup. I think it's one of them.
I like the second one. That sounds very Eddie Jones, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Either that, or he's planning to replace him, and it's a known plan in camp or something bizarre. But yeah, exactly. I mean, Eddie loves a bit of that. But yeah, disappointing, obviously, not to see him get a run out and just kind of see what he's all about. It does make way for Watson to get another crack at the cherry, and obviously, he looked awesome last week, Anthony Watson. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing him have another go and just seeing if it was, if the old form is back permanently, because I think he's definitely putting in a pretty good sort of bid for owning one of those. For owning, I guess, the 14 shirt. Do you think it's the right call to have him run out again, or would you have liked to have seen Johnny May step in his place, given that he's not had his run out in the warm-ups yet, or do you think that's just a plan that's ready for the next couple of games?
Yeah, I think we all know that Johnny May's our sort of gun winger. Watson's obviously been injured for a little while, and I know he's come back and played for Bath, but we've not really seen him regularly in an England shirt for a while. So I like the idea of giving him as much game time before the World Cup as possible. Mm-hmm. Personally, I prefer him at fullback, but Eddie's the man, and in Eddie we trust. So if he says he's a winger, he's a winger. Yeah,
I mean, look, I think the fact he's picked 6 at the back, and for pretty much all of them, with the exception probably of Johnny May and Big Joe, can cover fullback if necessary. I'm with you. I feel like Watson, as part of anything else, I think it's his dominance under the high ball. I wouldn't want to not have Daly involved, but at the same time, I just feel like Daly's almost a bit of a target, and it's probably a little bit unfair because actually he hasn't made any huge, glaring errors in the 15 shirt. But I don't know. There was something about the way Watson played under the high ball last week, and I guess we'll get the opportunity to see if that again, is the case this weekend. That just I don't know, had a little bit more confidence in him in the 15 shirt, and I wonder whether Watson at 15, Daly on the wing would be a better shout, or even have a look at Daly as I mentioned it I think in the last pod with Dan, but is Daly a potential cover at 13? Third choice.
I prefer Daly at 13 and on the wing to at fullback, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm probably different to most people. I really don't see Daly as an international fullback. I think he's world class on the wing. I think he can do a really good job at outside centre, which is where he usually plays. But similar to you, I just worry at that bombardment of the high ball when he's at 15. If he finds himself isolated there, I feel like teams are gonna use that and try and force him into making a mistake.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess on the flip side, last week Watson was at 14. And yet we were seeing him under the high ball regularly. So clearly they can manage that. It's not like old school rugby where only the 15's covering across the back. These wingers are there doing it, and Watson is one of them. So they are kind of sharing that workload at the back already. But it's not like Watson's short of pace. So Daly's not back there because he's got the raw gas to go further. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see where this goes, and if Eddie is really trying out different combinations and playing people slightly out of position. Daly at 13 is not really out of position, so it would be quite an interesting one to see, and it's one we haven't seen from him in an England shirt yet.
Yeah, I'm really surprised we've never seen him at 13. For an extended period of time, considering that's where he plays so well for Wasps.
Yeah,
it is a bit of a shock, and I feel like we've got. Mike Brown, I know he's not fantastic or exciting, but he's safe as houses underneath the high ball. And you've got Watson, who I think's the best fullback in the England team, and obviously we've got Goody.
We didn't talk about him anymore.
Yeah, I just find it a surprise that Eddie went as Daly at 15. But if it works, it works.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, this is, like you said, in Eddie we trust. He's made some interesting decisions that people have questioned, and it's all about whether or not it comes good for the World Cup, and certain things that people have been, I wouldn't say up in arms about, but certainly questioning. Things like Willie Hines. I thought last week Willie Hines looked superb, and genuinely think that he would be the better starter over Ben Youngs at the moment. Just based on what we saw. Whether or not Eddie will go to that extreme, we'll wait and see. But second start in a row for him. So we'll see how he gets on today and whether he can boss it like he did last week.
Yeah, I was when Danny Kerr was left out of the squad as a Quins fan, I was pretty upset with that. But seeing Willie Hines last week against Wales, I agree with you. I think Ben Youngs is probably looking over his shoulder a little bit.
Yeah. So moving on from that. The kind of the Watson Daly question mark at the back, and whether Daly covers 13 is probably the least of the slightly strange cover options that Eddie's looking at. Joe Marler is obviously normally loose head, covering tight head as well today, even though Sinclair's also on the bench covering tight head. What do you make of this? Or is this just media chatter that's taken away from what's going on in camp?
I mean, I see what Eddie's thinking with players that can cover multiple positions, but when does it become sort of relevant? If it's against the USA in a group game, okay, fine, we probably doesn't matter too much. If it's in a World Cup semi-final against South Africa or New Zealand, and we've got to play someone at loose head that's used to play in tight head, or vice versa, or someone in the back row that's used to play in hook, we're going to be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, is this something that? I mean, obviously the scenario isn't that we want the option to pick, a Joe Marler at tight head or a George Ford at 9. It's if something drastic was to happen on the day, during the game, and you're short on numbers. But the idea of George Ford covering 9, for example, which is one of the more bizarre ones, and I know
it's a scary thought, that.
Well, I mean, I believe he was a 9 before he was a fly half, but we're talking back at school day, so he has, by all accounts, he has been doing a bit of training in camp, in the 9 shirt. But yeah, I'm trying to imagine a scenario where that's necessary, because surely we're always going to have a backup 9 on the bench. So unless you're saying we're doing this because what happens if both 9s get injured, which it's unlikely, but it's more than possible. So I your starting 9 gets an injury in the first 5, and there's every chance that something else could happen. How do you go about putting this into practice, though? Like today, we've obviously got Hines starting. Ben Youngs is on the bench. Is he going to give George Ford 10, 15 minutes at 9 at some point during the game, or is this just, as I say, it's just we're aware that George Ford has been earmarked as a backup? Like, do we think we're going to see him behind the scrum today at any point?
I don't think we will, just because we've got options on the bench. Unless Eddie makes a change at half time, say, and then 20 minutes in, a little injury, then it might be forced. And I think that's sort of what that we've got the options there if we're really in a tight place and we need to, but hopefully we won't have to see it.
Yeah. So you don't think we're going to see all these kind of bizarre connotations of how the team comes together. It's just that it's there, and that's the thinking, that's the thought process. Should it come down to that?
Yeah, I think unless we've got sort of a 30-point lead and looking pretty good, I don't think there's much need for it.
I mean, on the flip side, obviously Jack Singleton, normally hooker, covering the back row today, by all accounts, because again, I think Jamie George is starting. Is he? I think.
No, Cowan Dickey's starting.
Cowan Dickey's starting. Jamie George is on the bench.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Other way around.
Oh no, maybe.
I'm sure we've got 3 hookers.
Jamie George. So Jamie George is on the bench, yes, and Cowan Dickey starts. Yeah.
So you're assuming that you've got to assume Jamie George is the guy who's going to come on and replace Cowan Dickey. Singleton obviously can play hooker. Well, he is a hooker, but he's there, I believe, to cover the back row. I mean, is he going to come on the flank? And Ludlam moves to 8. Is he going to come on at 8? Like, is it just the flank? Are we going to leave Billy on for full 80 again? Are we tempting fate?
I'd rather we didn't leave Billy on for the full 80, if I'm perfectly honest.
I'm amazed that he's been picked this week. I would have thought after the performance he put in last week, and we know what he's capable of, and we saw how strong he was last week. Surely this was an opportunity to call in. Who am I thinking of?
Hughes?
No. In the 31, Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson, yeah, who obviously had his first run out for England in the 8 shirt.
Yeah, I'd be a lot happier if Wilson was starting today. Just keep Billy wrapped in bubble wrap and keep him safe and keep him healthy. He proved last weekend that I don't really think he needs the run outs in the game time, because he's just a superstar, and whenever he's on the pitch, he's normally the best player on it.
Yeah.
The Singleton thing just confuses me a little. I think if you want a guy that can play hook and can cover the back row, I think Harry Thacker's probably the most obvious choice.
Yes.
But obviously Eddie didn't think that. So I'm a little bit confused by it, but we'll see what happens, I suppose. If Singleton comes on and covers the back row and puts a shift in, then you can't really complain.
No, I mean, it's great from a strength in depth point of view to know that we've got guys all over the park who can play in different positions, and that in theory you could put a completely different team out from amongst the same 31, and it creates lots of options. And but the bottom line is you can bring people out during the World Cup. It's not like your 31 is, if you lose any of them, you just got less numbers. If someone gets injured, like seriously injured, you can send them home and you can bring someone else out, and that kind of thing goes on. So I get the idea that I think this is where I'm questioning whether or not this is very much just a kind of a media thing, but the fact we've got 3 hookers involved, the fact we've got 3 tight heads involved today, surely this is just something that you do in training. You don't need to show it to the world. It doesn't really need to be practiced because it's such an unlikely scenario. It's more just, I would have thought, that within the camp, within the squad, within the team, people know who's going to do what in certain scenarios. It's not something that I feel like it needs to be showcased in a warm-up game, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is Eddie wants to, he knows who's going to act as these sort of last chance covers, and he just wants them to get that experience in a test match situation as opposed to just at training potentially. But I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense on paper.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, look, changing tack slightly, and I haven't done the maths because I just don't think anyone is capable of doing the maths. But with the world rankings, I believe, despite New Zealand's win today, I believe that both England and Wales and Ireland could theoretically still go to number 1 in the world off the back of today's results. Is that the case?
I thought New Zealand had to lose, but I might be wrong.
Well, I originally did, and then I'd read something else, probably another tweet from someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. But I had read something where they were saying it doesn't matter, and I think the justification for that was that basically the way the world rankings system works is that the kind of the further behind a team you are, the more points you get if you beat them, and the more points they lose if they lose to you. And because Australia and New Zealand were so far apart, last weekend, obviously, Australia stole a lot of points off New Zealand, but because the gap is still quite big, New Zealand beating Australia today is kind of seen as to be expected, and therefore they don't gain very much from it.
Right.
Obviously,
I'm assuming we'd have to win by quite a lot.
So I think England still would have to win by 16, or more than 15 points in order to go to number 1. I think Wales just have to win, but I could be wrong. We're going to find out before anyone has a chance to let me know. But if assuming that I'm right and assuming that is possible, is there? I mean, lots of people will say it's irrelevant. It's a World Cup. Who cares about world number 1? It's about who's the world champion. How much value do you think it adds to kind of a team's mentality in a situation like this? Firstly, for England, if they were to beat Wales by the required number and go to number 1 in the world at this point, does that add anything, do you think? Or do you think these guys are too professional and it's irrelevant? And I guess particularly given the type of team that he's putting out.
Yeah, I don't personally really think it matters, and I really don't think Eddie cares too much about it. From the team that he's picked for today, even to the team that he picked last week, knowing that if Wales won, they would go and become the top team in the world. Yeah. I think that kind of shows that he's not really bothered about who's number 1 in the world. I think he's just bothered about who's lifting that trophy.
100%. But I suppose, yeah, so on the flip side then, if Wales were to do it, given that they lost last weekend, is that huge for them? Or again, do you think it's, like England, they're not in that space where it really matters? It's just about getting themselves into the right zone to be ready for that opening game.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe with Wales, you look at the team they picked last week when they knew that number 1 ranking was up for the grabs, and they picked a really strong team. So maybe
looked like they wanted it.
Looks like they wanted it, exactly. So yeah, maybe it might mean a little bit more to Wales. I just don't think that it's really in Eddie's thinking.
Fine.
And I think that every single team that have got a realistic chance of winning the World Cup are just focused on that and don't really care about the rankings at the moment.
Yeah, which is how it should be. And to be honest, the ranking system is so bizarre. A lot of people saying the fact that had New Zealand lost today, they could have dropped to 6th.
Jesus, can you imagine?
And after 10 years at the top spot, clearly they're not the 6th best team in the world just because they lose today. So, and likewise, had Wales gone to number 1, they've never beaten New Zealand. How can you be the number 1 team?
How can you be the number 1 team
having never beaten the All Blacks? So, exactly. It's all a bit weird, the whole world rankings thing, but fine, we're going to leave that one alone. But yes, New Zealand did win today. It was pretty convincing, and it was almost a record win. They nilled the Wallabies. The Bledisloe Cup is retained. Lots of question marks. Well, I say question marks. certainly Twitter, and you Twitter, you're going to get whatever story you want. You just got to look in the right place. But lots of people complaining about the consistency of the refereeing and the decision making, and for a long time, New Zealand have obviously been hailed as a team that gets away with far too much. Did you see the game this morning?
Yeah, I watched the game this morning.
Did you feel that was the case, or do you think that's being unfair?
A little bit. A little bit. I felt like they're always going to get the rub of the green at home.
Yep.
They're always going to get the decisions that they want. But to be honest, I don't think Australia put up enough of a fight for it to really be relevant.
Yeah.
I think the Australians looked knackered. And the guy they had on the wing, the number 14, his name escapes me. He looks like the slowest winger I've ever seen. Not just in international rugby, but in Saturday Sussex League 3 rugby. It was ridiculous how slow he was. Reece Hodge, I think his name was.
That's it. Yeah. They
turned inside out by Richie Mwanga. I know he's quick, but you're running. He looked like a second rower.
Yeah, you don't want to be being put quite to that much shame a few weeks out from the start of a World Cup, in which you're trying to convince people you're in with a shout. They definitely look like a shadow of last week, and it looks like they just threw everything at last weekend. And the worry, I guess, is that they've poked the hornet's nest.
That's a worry for all of us.
Yeah. But I guess maybe it's a good thing that they've got their revenge out the way now, rather than saving it for the World Cup. Maybe they can get complacent again just in time for that England final. I'm not sure you get complacent in a World Cup final, but who knows?
I don't think it matters if they're complacent or not. We're beating them either way.
Exactly. It's already been predetermined, as we've been saying for 2.5 years.
Exactly.
Jaco Piper, I mentioned to you just before we started recording, I had assumed that he does a lot of his refereeing in the Northern Hemisphere. He wouldn't be kind of swayed by that it is a different style of rugby. He seemed quite regularly to be letting certain things go, and then he'd get a call in the ear and he'd come back and change his mind. Do you think that referees are do you think the fourth officials have been given, if you like, more power? Are they kind of telling the referees, no, you need to go back, you've made a mistake? Or are they meant to be there to say, this is what we've seen, you might want to look at it, and then leaving them to make their decisions?
I think that's what it should be. But especially the All Blacks game this morning, I felt that the TMO was kind of telling the referee almost what to do. I feel like they had an almost a disagreement when it came to the Dane Cole yellow card.
Yeah.
It seemed like the TMO was sort of getting his point across overly and sort of making the referee make the decision that he wanted. I don't think it's a big problem in world rugby in general, but I think this morning it was probably more than usual.
I mean, I think the fourth official should be there to review the information and provide it to the referee, and that's it. So in those situations, if the fourth official wants to say, I've got something I think you should look at, Jaco, they stop the game, he brings it up on the screen and he goes, here's the information, and then he lets the referee decide what to do with that information, rather than the ref going, oh, so I'm seeing this, what are you seeing? Oh, and what do you think it should be? I don't think it should be that way.
It slows the game down as well when they're having a sort of conversation.
It does. And mistakes are going to get made by referees just like they get made by players. But I don't think it should be for someone else, because the whole point is that you're supposed to be creating, a balance. And if some referees ref certain things a certain way, whether we agree with the way they're doing it or not, as long as they're doing it on both sides, it's fine. But I think when you've got someone else chipping in who maybe refs the game slightly differently, it can create situations where you come away going, was that fairly refed, that game? And I felt at times that there were a lot of offsides, taking the man off the ball.
That old All Black trick, taking the man off the ball. Yeah,
in at the side of the rucks, things like that, which happen in rugby for sure. But there didn't appear to be any real warnings. I mean, there were a surprising number of penalties without the warnings. And then obviously Dane Cole's got the card when he did. But it just, I don't know, it just felt like it wasn't being managed very well, and he didn't sort of stamp it out early on. which
it
is what you
definitely
need.
wasn't his best sort of refereed game, that's for sure.
Perinara also very good at the turnover. Rarely seems to go for the ball. But very good at kind of grabbing hold of the man and just holding on for dear life, keeping his knees off the floor and getting a penalty.
Very good at that, is TJ.
It is. Is it something we should be worried about? Is it something we should try and just copy? Like, you know, what's the solution to that? Because how do you, you know, unless you've, you know, you do the old have a chat with the referee before the game and say that's actually not a turnover. Just want to draw your attention to it and kind of make a thing about it. And it's not like it's some new thing that he's just started doing today. It's, you know, it's been happening for a long time.
Yeah,
is the answer? You know, he's been getting away with it for a long while as well. Is the answer just to say, do you know what? If you can't beat them, join them and start. I mean, I guess I'm saying it like we don't already do it. You know, I'm sure we do, but I guess it's just you watch it and you think, wow, there's not a lot of ways to defend that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they're working on solutions.
I think that there's always going to be something that some teams do better than others that aren't maybe to the letter of the law. And I think if it's something that you think is going to disrupt your game plan or your potential to win the game, I think it has to be sort of make it public. Eddie in a pre-match sort of post conference sort of sit there and say, you know, we've seen them do this, we've seen them do that, and make it a thing. Make the media aware of it. Put a little bit of pressure on the referee to see it a bit more.
Yeah.
I don't think copying it's going to help. I think obviously he's really good at it and he's been getting away with it for years. So then we just start to do it. It's not going to look right. It's going to look like a foul, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to look like an infringement. Whereas TJ does that so well that it kind of, you see him do it so often, you kind of forget that he's not supposed to be doing it.
Yeah. It's I mean it's a frustrating one, and it's definitely something that they do very, as you say, he does it very well, and part of me feels like it's part of the game, isn't it? See what you can get away with, play on the fringes,
of course.
And to be the best, you've got to be able to play on the fringes. Now, obviously, in theory, you've got to be on the correct side of the line, but you need to be as close to it as possible to take advantage of situations. And I guess if you can do this kind of thing and get away with it, then you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, and fair play.
Yeah, if you're going to get away with it, you're going to keep on doing it, aren't you?
Absolutely. Okay, look, let's move away from this for a moment then. I want to go back to, again, an email that you sent us a few weeks back when we were sort of starting to talk about World Cup squads and things. And you sent us a pretty, I think you've done a couple of them actually, you did a great one for the Barbars, but you sent us a pretty comprehensive breakdown of your 31-man squad for this World Cup. Obviously, this is before various things have come about, and I just wanted to kind of go through and just talk to you about some of the areas where Eddie's obviously gone in a different direction and see what your thoughts are. I mean, front row: Ben Moon, Dylan Hartley, Harry Williams. You selected all three of them. Obviously, none of them are involved. We've all, as a podcast, we've always been huge fans of Dylan Hartley. We've talked a lot in various episodes about his leadership, and for a long time there was, admittedly, question marks, on whether or not he was quite as good as, other options at hooker. But that the leadership, because the gap was relatively small at that time, the leadership kind of made up for it. Do you feel like we've made the right call, and that actually the gap has widened to the point where, as good as a leader as he might be, you've got to take quality over that? Or are you still in the Hartley camp?
I still like Dylan Hartley. I think he was a really, really good England captain. When I picked the 31 that I sent over to you guys, I think I had Hartley as Jamie George's backup, just ahead of Cowan-Dickie. I think now it's quite clear that Cowan-Dickie is probably superior to Hartley.
Yeah, I mean that's the gap that I'm referring to. I think at the time Cowan-Dickie was better, but I think perhaps the gap was not so big that the added value of his leadership didn't trump it. But I think now Cowan-Dickie's kind of stretched that lead to the point where
I think you can't really have an ex-England captain as your third choice for not making squads. I don't think it sort of sits right. Like I said earlier, I probably wouldn't have replaced him with Singleton. I probably would have preferred Thacker, but I think it was the right choice to leave Hartley at home.
Yeah. And then Ben Moon and Harry Williams. Obviously, I suppose the thing with Ben Moon is that he's pretty unfortunate. Joe Marler's come out of retirement unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Given that Marler has come out of retirement, the right call, or do you feel like actually, Marler, you shouldn't be able to just retire and then come out of retirement for a World Cup?
I mean, the fact that it's a World Cup, I think you just take the best man. And unfortunately for Ben Moon and for Harry Williams, because he can cover, Joe Marler's the better man. He's the better player. And I think it makes sense to, if you pick Marler, then we haven't got to pick Williams, and that space can be used elsewhere in the squad.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and presumably this is why Eddie's, gone and had a chat with Joe and clearly said to him, listen, I need you, because not only do I want you, in position, I want you out of position as well. You're covering 2 spots for me, and your country needs you or whatever, and like he was ever going to turn it down. There's a lot of people saying that he's out of order for coming out of retirement, like almost blaming him. And it's like, look, he's been asked by his country to represent them. Why on earth would you say no?
Yeah, why would you say no? It's a World Cup that we've got a really good chance of winning. And at the end of the day, he's the better player, so he has every right to be there.
Yeah, and it's not like he's retired from rugby. He's still playing for Quins. He's just...
Exactly, yeah.
You nailed the awesome foursome. That was always going to be... That was always going to be the call there. Curry, Underhill, Wilson again. The flankers you've got covered. I'm surprised that they didn't go with an extra flanker, but you went with the 3. You said exactly this. Just take the 3, and then Hughes at 8. Which again, I think we said that. Are we taking a bit of a risk? As good as Billy is, and he's always going to be the first choice. Is it a risk not taking an out and out 8, or do you think we've got 8 covered in the event that Billy's unavailable, injured, whatever?
To be honest, at the start of the Premiership season, just gone, I didn't want Nathan Hughes anywhere near the World Cup squad.
Yeah,
I just didn't think he was putting good performances in. But then towards the end of this Premiership season, he looked like a man on a mission. And I know that taking Hughes out and bringing in Ludlam gives you extra cover. You've got someone that can play 8, him and Mark Wilson. They can both cover the flanks. But I do just think having a number 8 is such an important position. I feel like you need to have a natural number 8. Yeah. And if Billy sort of has a niggle or goes down, I feel like Nathan Hughes, okay, he's not Billy Vinapola, but he's a very good backup 8. And I do think that, I think we might have overlooked him a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't come to bite us on the butt, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously one guy that did miss out, and I think probably just because injury meant that he just didn't have enough time to get himself back and fit ready for the World Cup, was Sam Simmons, who is a completely different 8. I mean, much more a flanker in sort of stature. Certainly not a like-for-like replacement for Billy, but Eddie seemed to like him when he was utilising him a while back. Had he been fit, would he have been in this squad, do you think? I mean, I think he was fit, but he'd only been back for a few weeks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive Simmons fan, just because I think at 8, you've got to be a bit bigger, I think, for international rugby.
I mean, Eddie loves a biggie.
Yeah, you don't really want, Sam Simmons having to play 8 in a World Cup quarter-final against Dwayne Vermeulen in South Africa because he's going to die.
It's a fair point.
And I just think if you're going to bring him as cover because he can play 8 and he can play on the flank, I think that Mark Wilson's
better.
Does that? Yeah. So I just didn't see the need for him personally. But yeah, I might be a little bit biased. I'm not a huge Sam Simmons fan.
Fair enough, mate.
In an England shirt.
Yeah, and specifically at 8.
Yeah, definitely not at 8.
Okay, Kerr, we've kind of covered that already. Hines is sort of, no one really knew who he was, and now they do.
Yeah.
And he seems to have been a pretty good find for England. So hopefully that continues, and we'll see more good things from him today. Ford Farrell, of course, 10s. We'll do it because obviously I've spoken about it with Dan a lot. But what are your feelings on Ford Farrell and then obviously Cipriani as the 3 options, and Cipriani being left out?
I think Cipriani should be our starting 10.
Do you really?
It's as simple as that for me. I think he should be starting 10. You have Farrell at 12, and you put Jonathan Joseph or Henry Slade outside him at 13. and have Manu coming off the bench. That's what I think we should do. It's never going to happen.
It's sort of the decision made now, isn't it?
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, well, so in his absence, is Farrell 10 or Farrell 12 the better option?
Farrell at 10, only because I feel like when George Ford is at 10 and Farrell's at 12, it's just an extension of Farrell. It's almost Farrell telling him what to do when he gets the ball, where to pass it, what to do with it. You don't really get the best of George Ford when Owen Farrell's on the field, I don't think.
Okay, that's interesting. So you think Ford actually is better for England when Farrell's not there and he's maybe ruling the roost a little bit?
Look at how Ford played on that tour to Argentina when the boys were away with the Lions.
Yeah. And
I think he was brilliant. And I think he's brilliant week in, week out for Leicester. And I'm just never fully impressed with him in an England shirt when he's got Farrell outside him.
Yeah. Well, what were your thoughts? I mean, we obviously talked about this in a few of our past episodes, and I certainly started to lean more towards the Ford camp after one of our listeners had commented on, let's not forget that George Ford has spent an entire season playing behind a receding pack, and yet, despite their team performance, his individual performances have been really, really strong for Leicester. And is that something that England might be looking at and saying, look, if the worst was to happen, do we want someone who can still make things happen in that situation? Do you are you on board with that idea, or do you think, nah, you're better off having a Cipriani in that situation to create something magic?
Yeah, I still think Cipriani. I think it doesn't matter if you're getting fast ball, if you're getting slow ball. I think having just Danny Cipriani on the pitch can produce magic. And in a tight game,
yeah,
I think I would have that over a George Ford. I rate George Ford. I really rate him as a 10. I just don't think, personally, I think Danny Cipriani is the best 10 in the world for me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't see.
Well, he's surely next on the list in the event of something happening. Hopefully, nothing does happen, or maybe hopefully it does. I don't know, but. So we may yet see him. Ford is very much a kind of safe pair of hands. I think I've said this on numerous occasions. You know what you're getting with him. You're probably not going to get a bad performance, but you're not going to get a phenomenal one either. And it's going to be very much about who does what around him. And I guess there are advantages to that, knowing exactly what you're getting from your 10. I think Cipriani absolutely can create moments of magic. He can be absolutely genius, and certainly can be up there with the very best in the world. But perhaps Cipriani has more occasion to kind of have these brain farts and get it completely wrong. And in a knockout competition, is that something that's concerning?
Well, I disagree with that still. I think if you look at the Scotland game, for instance, in the Six Nations, as far as I'm concerned, Owen Farrell was fly half and captain, lost control of that game.
Yeah.
And that's not something, Danny gets thrown in Danny Cipriani's face that, can he control a game? Can he slow it down when we need to? Well, Owen Farrell couldn't.
Yeah, true.
And I've never seen Danny Cipriani sort of implode like that and just throw wild interceptions and just sort of go into his shell like Farrell did.
Yeah, I mean, do you think with Danny Cipriani, the problem is that people don't forget, and so it doesn't really matter what he does now. You can't help but remember what he was like back in the day, and as different a player and as different a person as he might be now. People. I mean, Eddie Jones, particularly by not by all accounts, but it's what people are assuming, just doesn't like him, and that's the problem. He obviously went to Australia. By all accounts, he didn't change very much after he left England and went to Australia. So he wasn't particularly popular over there. He's come back as this new player, older, more experienced, more mature. But there's that sort of devil on his back that's still there, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah, I think that's the case, to be honest. I just think that he almost burnt his bridges to a point where, unless he knuckled down and did exactly as he was told, and just I think probably what they wanted to do was clip his wings a little bit and make him fit the system. Yeah,
but I guess that's just not how you get the best out of Danny Cipriani, is it?
Yeah, if you do that to Danny Cipriani, you're not really picking Danny Cipriani.
No.
Not to talk about him too much, but
and then you probably aren't. Then it probably makes sense not to pick him because you're not actually getting what it is that he can deliver in the first place. Oh, it's a debate that is going to continue to rage, and it's one of those where if things go wrong, which of course they're not going to, everyone will turn around and say, "Why didn't we have Danny Cipriani?"
But we're going to win the World Cup, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Shame for him, but it is what it is now. We've got our 31 and we need to get behind it. Moving on to the last few. Tio, do you think... So Dan, I mentioned this to Dan last week, or the other day, and he is convinced that it's an excuse. Do you think Tio has been dropped because of the incident with Mike Brown, or do you think he's been dropped because Eddie doesn't feel like he's... has what Eddie needs, and the incident with Mike Brown is the excuse?
Yeah, potentially. Maybe he looked at the 15 World Cup and realised that a rugby league convert in the centres wasn't a good idea.
It worries me a little bit because I do feel like the Tuilagi 12 game plan, there isn't an alternative option for that. Tuilagi is the only player of that type. Now, I don't think Tio offered the same as Manu by any stretch, but I felt that if Manu wasn't available to play, you had the option of putting Tio in and sticking with that same plan. That doesn't exist anymore.
I just think when you break it down, Ben Tio is a starting centre for the British and Irish Lions.
Yeah,
he's a world-class centre, and we have replaced him with Piers Francis.
Piers Francis, yeah, what the hell?
And I hear the argument of he's versatile, we can play 10. Well, we've already got Ford, we've already got Farrell, we've got Henry Slade that can step in at 10. How many versatile backup 10s do we need?
Yeah. And Jack Noel can play anywhere on the pitch.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's going to be playing flanker anyway in the World Cup finals. So.
Yeah. Or prop or hooker, wherever they need him, basically.
Wherever he wants to play, does
exactly.
What he wants.
Exactly. The roaming number 15 or whatever.
But back to Piers Francis. I mean, I've not been a big fan. I did think he played well against Wales last week, but to select him over Ben Tio, I just think is ridiculous. In all honesty.
Yeah. All right. Final one for you then. You had Ashton, and actually, I think you said in your email. I'm picking Ashton. Unfortunately, he just squeezes out Joe Cokanasiga. Now, obviously, Ashton has ruled himself out. Cokanasiga's come in. He seems to have taken that opportunity. He looked awesome last week. We're going to see another run out from him today. Do you stick by that? I mean, if Ashton was currently hadn't taken himself out of contention, would you still have Ashton, or do you think Cokanasiga has kind of stepped above him?
No, I was massively wrong. Cokanasiga and Johnny May are clearly our starting wingers, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wrong.
You think May and Cokanasiga will start?
I think they should. Yeah.
And therefore, what would you do? Watson at the back? Because you preferred Anthony Watson at fullback, right?
I prefer Watson at fullback.
So in that situation, you'd have Daly on the bench?
Yeah, I'd have Daly on the bench. I think it might change if it was a big, important game where we need to sort of, if we get a penalty at halfway, we need Daly on the pitch to take all the points on offer. But for our first opening games, I wouldn't start Daly.
Yeah. I think that Cokanasiga will be on the bench. I think he'll come on as an impact player, but it's a good problem to have right now because we haven't even mentioned Noel in that.
We've left. Ashton's not there. Solomona's not there. We've got so many good wings in this country.
Yeah, so many connotations of what the back three could look like, and in multiple scenarios, it looks awesome. So I'm not really concerned about what we do there. I think whatever we pick, there's going to be someone that we're going, how could you leave him out?
Yeah, I think so.
And that's a good problem to have. Although I still think that taking 6 to cover the back 5 when they're that good is just unnecessary.
Especially when they're that versatile as well.
Yeah.
Especially when we've got so much versatility, to take 6 seems strange, but like I said before, in Eddie we trust.
Right. Well, look, we've given it a pretty good go, having a chat about expectation. Well, about what we're likely to see today in terms of expectations. Have you got a prediction?
I have. I think we're going to win 28-21.
28-21. I like it.
7 points. 7 points.
Gone full score. I mean, I've gone for the 16-point win because I figure why not? It's the only way we're getting to number 1 in the world, if in fact that's even possible. Because
I'd rather that happen.
So on the basis of that, I probably should have worked this out in advance. I'm going to go Wales 12. So 28, isn't it?
Yeah.
28. 12-28 to England, obviously. Which is obviously a massive shout, but why not? That's what I like doing on this pod. get a few people contacting us, telling us how outrageous our theories are and how we don't know what we're talking about, and
stranger things have happened.
Accuse us of wearing rose-tinted glasses, because it's not like we've ever confessed to doing that ourselves. But
I admit to wearing them 24/7.
It's what you got to do. It's what you got to do.
Exactly.
Once again, Billy, massive thanks to you for joining us today, because it's made this possible, because I'm not sure anyone wanted to listen to me talk for an hour on my own. Hopefully it goes down pretty well, sounding pretty good so far. So we will leave you guys listening to contemplate the build-up, to watch the first half. We'll leave you with the anthems just to get you in the mood, and we'll be back at half-time to see how the boys are getting on. Welcome back, guys. Billy, that was possibly not quite as exciting as what we were hoping for and what we saw last weekend. What are your initial thoughts on the game so far?
Yeah, I think Wales have controlled the game. We were good in defence, I thought, to start.
Yeah.
And I thought we could build off that maybe. But if I'm honest, when Navidi came on for them, I think he made a massive difference at the breakdown. It put us under more pressure, and then obviously with Watson getting put in the bin, they've really sort of turned the screw a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't help. Are we missing a kind of an out and out seven? Someone who can get in there and really kind of compete at the breakdown.
Yeah, I think so. Ludlam seems to have taken it upon himself to make sure he sort of locates Navidi whenever there's a breakdown.
Yeah, but
you can tell he's just not at that level. There seems to be one or two guys hanging off Navidi whilst he's still on his feet. Without Underhill or Curry, it's going to be difficult for us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess take a step back and say, look, this isn't England's first choice team. Put the tinted glasses on. It's only 10-0. Wales, I think mistakenly, I think everyone would agree, mistakenly turning down points early on. You're building for a World Cup, get into World Cup mode, take the points when they're on offer. That's what England did last week, and it builds pressure. They didn't, and I thought it was credit to England that when Wales didn't, England managed to turn that pressure around and deal with it. So positives there. But yeah, England seem to lack some of the fire that they had last weekend. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. Maybe it's not quite so clinical. Maybe they're trying things. I mean, Eddie talked a lot about wanting to approach this game and play a different type of game plan. I don't know what that is. It is different for sure because we're not winning. But do you think maybe they're just approaching the game differently and trying things? I mean, like George Ford, the crossfield kick, a bit unlike him. Could have been interesting. Obviously, went a little bit long. The clearance when we turned the ball over in that sort of last 7 or 8 minutes, when I think they mentioned in commentary, he picked the ball up and just hoofed it down the field without really looking to see what might or might not be on.
Yeah, I think we seem to be playing a little bit too defensively. I think we were more sort of open and expansive last week, looking to sort of take it to Wales. Today, it seems like we're trying to neutralise them and then sort of build an attack from that. Maybe it's the fact that it's at the Millennium Stadium. We kind of embarrassed them with our second string side last week, so it's probably ramped them up into another gear. And they were ruthless with their try. We were sleeping, and they saw it and they attacked it and they got their reward for it. And I mean, if that happens in the World Cup, we're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely. I mean, look, if this game comes down to that try, I think England can go away and go, okay, look, that's something that's one of those mistakes that you make once, and you kind of learn from, and you never make it again. So I don't think that's a worry so much as come on, wake up. You've always got to be alert, and this just proves that teams can, if they've got the smarts and you've got someone like a Dan Bigger who's always looking, they can take advantage of a situation where you're unprepared. So make sure you're never unprepared. But I think 10 points is a small enough margin. It could certainly have been bigger. It's a small enough margin that it wouldn't take much for England to get back into this game. It'll be interesting to see, what kind of changes Eddie makes. Do you expect him to make quite early changes in the second half?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this about half an hour in, and I sort of scanned through the bench, and the only man there that I see being able to make a huge difference is Manu. But I have to be honest, I think Piers Francis has played really well. He's played well in defence. He's hit nice lines. He's been pretty solid. So I'm not sure if it's such a personnel change as opposed to a change in how we sort of take Wales on.
Yeah, true. I mean, I guess part of the changes, it's almost like by bringing on, by bringing in a lot of changes, you almost give England a kind of a free restart, don't you? Because you kind of go, okay, we've got a different team now. And is there something? Because I feel like with 10 points only in the game, it's not going to take much. England needs something positive to just get themselves into, just build a bit of momentum. They on the rare occasion that they've made breaks, silly mistakes have cost them, all the advantage that they've gained. And we need to string something together and we need to come away, even if it's 3 points, just something that just kind of gets them back into the game. Because it just feels, last week I was on the edge of my seat for 80 minutes, and this week it just doesn't feel quite so. I don't know what the word is. There's something missing.
It kind of feels like we're being controlled a little bit by Bigger's boot. Yeah, it's not really giving us an opportunity to gain sort of territory or possession or build anything. And then I suppose that sort of lulls them into a sense of Wales have got control, and then they use it.
Yeah, and I don't think. Go on.
I don't think 10 points is beyond us by any means. I just think we really need to make something happen, like you say, get the scoreboard going, and then build on that.
I feel like this is the sort of scenario where we could see England play a completely different game in the second half.
I hope so.
And until it doesn't happen, I'm believing that's what's going to happen. But yeah, they need something, whether it's someone to just step up and do something, just get the team, going to give them that little morale boost. I mean, maybe just the chat they're going to have at half time. Just kind of talk themselves back into this game, because they're by no means out of it. And I think that's the key thing. It felt a little bit towards the end like they almost felt like they were out of the game.
Yeah,
which of course they're not.
Yeah, they kind of. I think they just sort of took the sting out of it, and then with 10 men, we were just hoping. With 10 men, with 14 men, hoping to sort of not concede again. It looked like.
Yes.
We didn't want to give away a penalty and let them get another 3 or give away another try. So I think maybe once we get Watson back on the field, we can sort of give it a go. But I think it's important that we don't concede again, especially another try with 14 men. I'd like to see Manu come on. They were really stretching us wide early.
Yes.
I think with Manu up the middle, they're not going to be able to do that as much, because if he makes a break and not stopping him with one man, it will tighten them up a little bit. We've been a little bit inaccurate as well. So,
yeah, they've definitely been mistakes and kind of the silly ones. I mean, just it's always frustrating, isn't it, when there were those sort of silly errors that are just unnecessary. I mean, twice now we've been pinged for intentionally knocking the ball on. You learn this at school. That shouldn't be a thing. At this level, and less than 5 weeks out from a World Cup. We don't want to see that kind of thing. But I felt like England were defensively in good control for the first sort of 7 or 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then it just seemed to take the foot off the gas a little bit. And all the talk about Eddie talking about how he wanted England to be really physical. Defensively, they've been really physical. They just haven't put their stamp on attack yet. I want to see something from them that just sparks the all 15 of them back into action, because I feel like it's simmering just under the surface. But
I think it's going to need something to kickstart it. This is something we can definitely get. I mean, there is some positives though. I mean, Daly's been really good under the high ball. Yeah, Bigger he tested him a couple of times, and then he went, right, that's not working. I'll go and test Big Joe.
Yeah. And that could end up being a problem for them, because whilst he's relatively untested with the high ball, if he does take it with space to build up, some
they're in trouble.
He's 120 kgs and the second quickest guy in the England squad. So,
if he brings that down with grass in front of him, they could be on their heels.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. But I think Biggar's, give them credit. I think Biggar's playing very well, and for all of the people saying he's a last 20 type of player, he's controlling the game brilliantly for Wales. So he's the problem man for England right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that we're dominating them at set piece time with our sort of second choice pack, give or take a couple of guys, is something that really sort of we should take and build on from it and look at as a real positive. I think again from last week, and it stayed the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what Eddie's looking at, isn't it? This is what these warm up games are for him. It's about, it doesn't matter what we the supporters think. It doesn't matter about the results really. I mean, yes, having a winning run it helps, but the key thing is identifying things and being able to come away from the game at the end and sort of say, these are the areas that we're really positive, and we're doing it with a second or third string option in some cases. That's something to be proud of and to take into the next game and the one after, and then ultimately into the World Cup. So
yeah, but
they're going to turn it around. I might have to revise my 28-12 because
maybe.
So it's now 29-13.
We'll take it.
Why not?
We'll take it.
Okay, great. Let's get back to it because obviously a big second half needed from England, and we should come back at the end, hopefully with a slightly more positive outlook. But we can digest it all then.
Yeah, that's it. I'm confident. Come on, the boys.
Let's do it. Catch you guys then. Welcome back, guys. Billy, obviously not the result we were hoping for at half time, but we did say if it comes down to that try, and Eddie said at the end there, perfect conditions for a World Cup warm-up game.
Yeah, and he's right. He's correct. It was clear that one team treated that as a World Cup warm-up game, and one team treated it as a World Cup final, and I think that'll show when it gets to the World Cup.
Yeah, I think, obviously the purpose of this podcast is to put a positive spin on absolutely everything that England do. But I think, it is a World Cup warm-up game. It would be great to be unbeaten all the way through to beyond the final. Just means we're going to have to wait until the actual World Cup starts, or at least until next weekend, to have that unbeaten run. But, we needed, a lot of people saying of last weekend, England know how to perform, when they're winning, but they struggle when they're put under pressure. So we needed pressure kind of scenarios, in order to kind of prep, especially with some of the younger, less experienced players. And it is a fairly inexperienced squad. It was a test match in that respect. 10-6. It wasn't 10-6, was it? It was 13-6 in the end. Yeah. 13-6. And they were tested, and there was a definite, people will say, well, you only put 6 points on when you brought on your first team, if you like, or not your first team, but your super subs. But we only gave them 20 minutes. If they can do that in 20 minutes, and it takes a while to kind of really get into the game, we've got to be thinking, do you know what? Actually, we can hold our heads up, or they can hold their heads up. Throw myself in with them, because This is essentially a predominantly a second team that's gone out against a Welsh, maybe not first team if they were picking, from everyone, including the injured players, but nevertheless the best team that they were able to field in Cardiff, where we know it's always difficult. And I thought they did all right. There were mistakes for sure. There are definitely things for them to work on. But yeah, I think we said it at half time, as I say, that try, watching it back, it's just frustrating. It feels like it's unfair. You know what I mean? There was something about it that you just thought, oh, okay.
It felt like they, I mean, it's probably our fault. We weren't awake. We sort of thought, they're going to wait for us to get our man in the bin, and they're going to wait for us to bring on Youngsy for Hines.
Yeah.
And, they don't have to. They They like Youngsy said in the pre-match or post-match interview. It was smart play from them. They took an opportunity, and it was well done. But it won't happen again.
No, well, this is the point, isn't it? They did take an opportunity, but it's not the sort of thing that needs working on. You simply go, right, well, yeah, we clearly need to be thinking about that in future.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's not a mistake that you make again. I guess the biggest worry, perhaps, is the line-out drive. A huge strength for England last week, a huge strength generally. And they struggled today.
I think especially the last one, the one that kind of put the nail in the coffin for the game. We're playing Wales in Wales. For them to go number one in the world, like I said, they're treating it like a World Cup final in front of their crowd. I think if that's a different situation in Japan where they haven't got a full stadium, they're not at home, I think we drive that over and score.
Yeah,
with our big boys. I'm not too worried about today. I like the fact that same as last week, we've had problems before with swinging momentum, like against Scotland when they got on the upper hand, we just couldn't slow them down. I thought last week in the second half when Wales started to sort of gain a bit of control and score some points, we did well sort of slowing down the game and cutting the momentum and putting some points back on the board. And I felt the same again in the second half. We come out, we scored some points. We got that early 3. We kind of didn't let it run away from us. And I think that's all you can ask for in a build up to a World Cup.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we said, didn't we, that England needed to take first blood. They needed something to give themselves a little bit of momentum, and they came out and in the first 10 minutes, 2 relatively quick penalties, 6 points, 4 points in the game, and it stayed that way until the last sort of 7 minutes or 8 minutes or something. So they gave themselves the chance. They just weren't quite clinical enough to convert the game, and you can argue that had we gone out there with a full strength side right off the bat, different story. But it's about building a squad of 31, not building a team of 15, and it's about preparing for a tournament that's going to have multiple scenarios. And I think there's definite positives to take from it. And I guess as much as it would be nice to just be unbeaten, in some ways, the harder the ride to the World Cup, the more you're going to learn from it, and the more opportunities you have to put things right to be fully kind of prepared for what you're going to face when the competition starts, and particularly, touch wood, when you get into the knockout stages.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure in 2003 in one of the warm-up games, we lost a close game to France in France. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like you've got to go unbeaten in your warm-up to the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just about, like you say, building the full squad, all getting them sort of game time in the legs and playing as a cohesive unit. I think we did that today. I think we can hold our heads up high, played a good game. We started with our main second stringers against the now number one team in the world's first team.
Yeah, well, exactly. Speaking of which, so is Eddie Jones now playing mind games already?
That was the best thing I've ever heard him say. It was brilliant.
The number one team in the world, the deserved World Cup favourites.
Yeah, exactly. Puts the pressure. I think he did that to Ireland in the build-up to the Six Nations when we went and beat them in Dublin.
Yeah.
He did the same thing. He said, they're the favourites. They're probably the best team in the world. I think they were second to New Zealand at the time. And, they're probably favourites to go and win another Grand Slam. And we got to Dublin. It obviously rolled up our boys and put a bit of a beating on them. And I think he's going to be using that for Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a bit of Jose Mourinho about him.
Are you an Alan Wynne-Jones fan?
Yes, I am. If he was English, I would.
Of course, we'd love him.
Son,
love him
Alan Wynne, but he's not. So it's just frustrating how good he is. But I feel like he holds quite a lot of power over referees because of who he is, because of his stature. When they were sort of having a bit of handbags.
But he's always in the middle of it. He doesn't lead by example in terms of don't get involved in that because you never know which way the referee's going to take it. No. He's always the one right in the middle of it. Surely,
I think he knows he's got
a leader of men. Yeah, maybe that's probably why I have a problem with him because it's he's got that and he's not English.
Yeah, I mean it's mainly the not English bit, but yeah, for sure. I feel like he just sort of knows that he's got the ref's ear and he can swing it the way he wants to swing it. Because I felt Faz had a point saying, we didn't start that. That was sort of the Welsh boys not playing to the whistle and worried that we've got the territory at the moment. And somehow Alan Wynne managed to swing it
around. It's frustrating. I think I can't remember. I meant to ask the question. I don't think I actually asked it before we started this. But one of the things Dan asked last week was who had the most to prove. Who do you think had the most to prove, and who do you think stepped up, and who do you think maybe fell short?
So I listened to the podcast that you and Dan put out before, and I was thinking when he relayed the question, it kind of got me stumped because I didn't really think there was anybody.
I felt that way.
But if I had to pick someone, and it might be a little bit left field, but I would say Dan Cole. Okay. I just feel like with Sinclair's hot head and his temper, there might have been an opportunity for Dan Cole to start a game where we need a solid scrum and we need our discipline. So I thought maybe Dan Cole. It's a difficult question. I don't think there's a real answer, but if I had to sort of give one, it would probably be Coley. I don't really think he put his hand up today. No. Looked like he was struggling. Looked like he was quite tired.
He's getting old, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly that.
And if he's not, I apologise, but he looks it.
No, he's definitely getting on a bit. He's definitely getting on a bit. But I don't think Sinks has got anything to worry about from that performance.
Well, you know what? It's one of those where Carl Sinclair, the hothead, and often with guys like this, you give them a bit of experience, you give them a bit of sort of seniority, and they calm down. And it's almost like because you brought Genji in, he's kind of taken over that mantle.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see whether we have two of them or whether actually Genge becoming the kind of the young hothead actually kind of simmers Kyle down a bit, which would be great. I mean, we don't want them to lose the edge. This is the thing, isn't it? You can talk about not wanting to give away silly penalties, and that's absolutely right. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the edge. And you want a bit of that feistiness. You know, if you're playing against Wales and they do start something, you want the guys to turn around and respond. You know, don't get yourself sent off, but also don't back down, and keep, because it fires everybody up.
And Genji and Sinks aren't going to take any crap from anyone.
I thought as a unit, I thought all of them today it was great. Every time there was any kind of scuffle, literally the entire team got involved. And what can a referee do in those situations?
Yeah, I mean,
as it's a clear-cut starter.
Yeah, as it should be as well. I mean, especially against Wales.
Yeah,
you got if he's wearing a white shirt, you've got his back to the end.
Well, and I wonder whether that's what Eddie was talking about at the end when he was talking about, they were asking, what have you learnt from today? And, he was saying, some of the big takes from this game has been that sort of solidarity of the whole team, the whole unit, the way that they play for one another. And I wonder whether he's referring to these situations where they've all just kind of come together, in defence of one another, kind of no matter what, because that's what you do, and it's a World Cup and it's a squad, and you need to be playing for one another. You can't be playing as an individual, and hopefully that's one of the reasons why he's named the 31 now. Lots of people questioning why he's not waiting, because of course I think he's got until the 8th of September, I think.
Yeah, he's got until early September. I like the fact that he hasn't waited. It builds a cohesive team. Everyone knows where they stand.
And it controls the narrative in the media. Instead of it being speculation about who he's going to select, and instead of these games then becoming about individuals needing to put in individual performances in order to be selected, it's like, we've got our 31, and it enables him to do things like mixing the teams up as he has been. If you didn't have your 31 yet, I don't think you could do this kind of thing, because it would make no sense. Not that he went nuts, but obviously Singleton in the back row, Marler playing both sides of the scrum. I did think at one point we were going to see Ford move to 9 when Farrell moved into 10 and Tuilagi went outside. But I'm quite glad we didn't as well. And hopefully Willie Hines is okay. And it was a bit of a niggle, and I don't know whether when he went off the second time, whether that was a substitution or whether he was still struggling.
I mean, he looked like he was a big clear out he took on the top of his head, I think, that rocked him. He got up really slowly from that.
The second time or the first time he went off?
No, the first time. Right. The first time he took a big, I can't remember, I think it might have been Navidi just cleaning him out, but straight on the top of his head.
That's when he went HIA, right? And he came back on after half time.
Yeah, that was that one.
And then he went off again maybe 10 minutes later. So I don't know whether that was then the kind of the official changeover or...
I'm not sure if he had fully recovered from that clamp that he took, in all honesty. I think he'll be all right.
In terms of looking at because I agree with you, I don't think there are many people who are trying to really prove, there's no one who really needed to perform to kind of justify their selection as such. But I think there were definitely one or two who needed to perform to maybe become the starter. And obviously the Hines-Youngs debate. How did you feel that went? Do you think Ben Youngs, with his experience, is the sensible starter, or do you think Willie Hines actually is offering more?
Yeah, I think Willie Hines controls the game better.
And really he's quicker. I felt Ben Youngs was really quite slow, and at a point when actually you're trying to turn the pressure up, and you've brought on your super subs, and you're trying to turn a close game and get the momentum. You can't afford to be slow at every breakdown, and I kind of felt like he was a bit slow at the breakdowns.
Yes, I mean we had a good opportunity inside the Wales 22, and he slowed us down, and he was a pretty poor pass to Courtney Laws that he knocked on, and it cost us all the good work to get into that position. I just don't think I like nines to be sort of a little bit nimble, can get about a little bit like Danny Kerr, like a Hines.
Yeah,
and I kind of agree with you. I think Youngsy's maybe not where he needs to be, but we know that Eddie likes him.
Well, I was going to say that. So the trouble is that Eddie, when we had assumed Young's Kerr was the likely pairing, we often said that Ben Youngs doesn't offer as much as a finisher as Danny Kerr does, and so Danny Kerr, we felt for a long time, had played himself into that finisher role because of the way he plays, and actually having him start and bringing on a Ben Youngs to finish a game, Ben Youngs isn't so much of an impact player.
Yeah, I think.
Are we in the same boat with only two scrum halves, and actually because of it, you have to start Ben Youngs so that you can bring on a Willie Hines to turn the sort of the whatever the saying is, in that last 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think if you pick Youngs in the squad, you've got to start him because he doesn't offer much coming on as a finisher, as Eddie likes to call them.
Yeah.
So if he's in the squad, he has to start, and there's no point in talking about what ifs of him not being in the squad. So I kind of think
that's the likely way it's going to go.
Yeah, I kind of think he's going to be starting at 9 and Faz at 10.
Okay. Again, looking at combinations, looking at people who can play out of position. Are we now looking at Jamie George as a potential winger?
I love Jamie George.
That little break down the side, and more importantly, the dummy.
Was it Alan Wynne? I think he sold him down the river with that.
I mean, I don't think it was, but let's say it was.
Well, it is now. It was now.
Exactly.
It was definitely Alan Wynne.
Forevermore. Alan Wynne Jones got sold.
Got sold down the river.
I mean, that was awesome. And it was just a lovely little bit of play, and it just highlighted Watson's gas as well when he did get on the end of the ball. And obviously, there's only so much you can do in 3 feet of space.
Yeah.
And he did well, but you'd expect the number one team in the world and the favourites for the World Cup to make that tackle, and they did. So
well, that's it. I think we put a good performance in against the World Cup favourites. So hopefully we can step it up and beat them if we do have to face them in the World Cup. That seems to have their name written all over it.
Indeed. Next weekend we've got Ireland. Is Eddie going to change things up? Are we going to see another experimental side? What would you like to see? What do you think we're going to see?
I would like to see our gun 15. Yeah. I'd like to see the 15 that if the World Cup final was today, that'd be the 15 they'd put out, because I don't think we're going to see that against Italy in Newcastle.
No.
So I'd like to see at least in one of the warm-up games we put the big boys out, even if it's for just a half, for just 50 minutes, and then wrap them up in bubble wrap after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the plan.
And so for you, is that Sinclair, George, and Mako? I'm guessing is not going to be available for that anyway. So it's not necessarily going to be the first 15. But who do we have then? Would you go Marla?
Yeah,
George,
Marla,
Sinclair,
George, Sinks, yeah, Marrow,
yeah,
and Laws probably.
Okay, yeah, he hasn't actually had a go in the row yet, has he?
No, I think that's our best row pairing.
And Cruz on the bench, or would you? Yeah. Or would you go?
No, I'd have Cruz on the bench. I like Cruz over.
Yeah, I do.
I'd have him on the bench. And then obviously.
So you then go Billy a third game in a row.
Third game in a row, but then if you do that, you kind of got to pull him after 50 and then rest him completely against Italy, which isn't the end of the world.
And I guess the other problem we've got with putting out a sort of a first 15, if you like, is will Underhill and or Curry be available? Because one of those two is the 7 that we really missed today. Yeah,
for sure. I thought Ludlam did really well.
He played well, but I think like they were saying in commentary, he is a 6, and the trouble is, he is young, he is inexperienced, and you ask a guy like that who's on his, only on his second cap to play essentially out of position. He can only give what it is that he does, and so what we got was 2 sixes, and so we really struggled to compete the breakdown. And when you're up against the likes of Navidi,
he's a beast at a breakdown. That boy,
you need to be able to give as good as you get, and that just wasn't ever really going to happen with the players that are available to us right now.
Yeah,
and it's an interesting one because so it sounds like, well, that's a worry, right? And yet we have two, potentially, if not already, world-class sevens nursing niggles.
Oh, for sure. I think they're both world-class. So, I would happily have one at 6 and one at 7.
Oh, and just go. When we were gutted, I mean, we've been calling for that for months. We really wanted to see it. And when it was announced that that's what they were going to play last weekend, we were really excited about seeing it. And then, of course, Underhill unavailable for injury, and Curry lasted 30 minutes, but looked awesome in that first 30.
He just is. He's unbelievable.
I feel like, him today would have made a difference, or Underhill.
Yeah, either
having
one of them would
that
have really
ability to put pressure on them at the breakdown, because we just would have.
Yeah, we would have been able to contest it a little bit better, I think, and really sort of not given Wales the sort of the dominance there, but then also the confidence of once they've won a few and dominated that area, they kind of, our players look like they didn't really think they could win it.
Yeah.
It looked like if Navidi was over the ball, he was over it, and you're not moving him. When you've got Underhill steaming into you, that's not the case.
Yeah, no, true. So if we're assuming that Billy at least starts again at 8 because you're going gun 15, Wilson at 6?
Yeah, Wilson at 6.
And then cross our fingers that one of Underhill or
one
Curry
of
is available. I'd hopefully Underhill, because we haven't seen him yet, and we haven't seen him. I think we last saw him against New Zealand, didn't we?
Yeah, he hasn't played for a while. He's been injured a lot for Bath as well.
When he won the game, but it was disallowed.
Yeah, that was a load of crap as well.
Yeah. It's a story for another, or not a story, a discussion for another time. And then, are we assuming that Youngs gets a start from what we've just said?
Yeah, I think you've got to start him if he's going to be the man that Eddie would start in a World Cup final, then he has to be the man that starts against Ireland. I think with Faz at 10.
Faz at 10, Tuilagi 12, both of whom haven't had a start yet.
Probably Slade at 13.
Yes, so if Slade's fit, you go him at 13. Otherwise, I think JJ again.
Yeah, if not, then JJ.
May, you bring in on one wing. Do you stick with Cokanasiga? Do you go Watson again? I mean, how did you think Watson got on today? Obviously, the yellow card didn't help. Couple of errors, but the gas looked awesome. And other than the mistake, there were a couple of really tasty high balls that he did brilliantly with. Yeah,
it's difficult. Watson's obviously got the experience and that ability to deal with a high ball, but I kind of like to see Cokanasiga play as much international rugby as he can.
I would rest Daly next week. I'd say, look, we're not making a decision right now, but we know what he's capable of. He's had two games in a row. He's looked solid. Wales thought that the high ball was going to be a problem. He dealt with it. But yeah, stick Watson at 15. See what he's got in the locker, because you're considering him as an option there. And then you've got Cokanasiga on one wing, May on the other. So you've got some serious gap. You've got your two quickest players, you've probably got your three quickest players in the squad across the back three. Yeah.
And I think if you've got two of your back three that are good in the air, you can kind of have one that might not be so fantastic.
Yeah, true. And actually, do we know what Cokanasiga's like in the air? He wasn't really tested. They went once. Did I miss something? Was there?
No, it just looks like he sort of maybe lacked a bit of confidence, or maybe just not as comfortable in like taking high balls in the air, or just not had the experience doing it that the other guys have had.
He needs
to. That's not what he's there for.
No, but pretty useful if he's first man to the ball. You don't want to be the guy competing against that, do you?
Oh God, no!
Running full pelt into 120 kgs.
Yeah, I think that's where you make a business decision and slip or fall over or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that to me that sounds like a pretty tasty 15. Is there a danger that if you go that route and you say we're going to play a gun 15 as it's been labelled, is there a danger that a little bit like Wales last week, a loss is a massive setback, or is that something you can't really be? Can you not really look at things that way this close to a World Cup? And you just have to back yourself?
Yeah, I don't think a loss particularly matters. If Eddie Jones has said that none of the World Cup games they're just warm-up games, then they're just warm-up games.
But which I think you can say when you're trying things out. But if you go, this is my number one team, this would be my World Cup final team. I know that in reality it doesn't matter because you get another bite at the cherry in the World Cup itself. But psychologically, that's a big blow, isn't it? 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out.
I mean, potentially. I don't particularly think so. I think the media would have a field day with it potentially, but I don't think. It's all good saying, well, this is the World Cup team and they can't beat Ireland in a World Cup warm up. But at the end of the day, it's not World Cup final day.
Yeah, true. I mean, South Africa in 2007 lost 3 of their warm up games, or maybe all 4 of their warm up games, and then ended up winning it. So
exactly, you catch fire and things happen. I wouldn't look too much into it. I just think that you're going to want your top team out for at least a half together before they head to Japan.
100%. And I think you do it. You want to test them against a stronger opposition. You don't want to test them against.
I think if you put them out against Italy, it kind of looks like you're protecting them from that. It looks like you're protecting them from the media getting on their back if they don't pick up a result against Ireland.
So you think you go gun 15 against Ireland. You got a week off. And then you actually go with another kind of slightly out of left field side for Italy, or you? Yeah,
that's what I would do. I'd let them play against Ireland, the top team, and then the real important guys, Farrell, Billy.
Yeah, because it gives them 2 or 3 weeks off before the Tonga game. And then I asked Dan this question going into the World Cup. We kind of right. So how do you feel about the schedule? Because we basically, our games just get gradually tougher. And we discussed this and we kind of said, look, is this a positive? Because actually, it's this kind of incrementally, slowly getting more difficult. And so you're kind of building into the tougher games. Or would you rather get some tough games out the way early on when you can play some of your stronger guys so that you can then start to rest some of them because there's a long way to go?
No, I think it suits us to have the Tonga and the USA first up. Where we might not have to play the big boys for the full 80 or for even the game. You can rest some of them,
bring them off the bench,
and then exactly, and then lead it up. So gradually, as the competition gets further in, these games become knockout games, and we're probably in that mindset before some of the other teams that have got a bit of an easier pull.
Yeah, because it's a danger perhaps as well if you have a couple of tough games, and then you kind of have an easy run for a few weeks, and then suddenly you're back into full-on test match mode, and you've kind of maybe slightly out of test match practice. True.
Yeah, that's it.
But I think bottom line, it was a positive, not a positive result, but it was there are positives to take out of it. It could have been worse. They are the number one team in the world. They are the favourites for the World Cup, according to Eddie Jones. And an England second team came pretty close in a warm-up game. So,
after the second team beat them the week before.
Yeah,
so
well, exactly.
It's looking good, I think. I think it's really looking good for us.
Positive stuff. And the next couple of games will be interesting, particularly if we do get a chance to see the first choice side come out against Ireland next weekend. And I don't yet know whether Dan's going to make an appearance for that one, but with any luck, if he's not, Billy will be around to help us out, and likewise throughout the World Cup. If there are times when we're struggling, if you're happy to join us again, we'd love to have you back on. Anything you want to add before we allow these guys to head off and enjoy the rest of their weekend?
Just want to thank you guys for letting me be a part of the pod, letting me be a part of England's future World Cup win, and just to remind Dan that we did actually Eastbourne beat East Grinstead in the Sussex Cup final 2 years ago. And since the money man's gone, they're pretty awful. So he can put that in his pipe and smoke it.
Well said, sir. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the semi-live pods that we're going to be doing throughout the World Cup. As I always say, if you get the opportunity, head over to iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. If you've got anything you want to add, if you've got any questions for us, or stories you want us to share, or just really anything you want to get in touch and have a chat, email us, englandrugbypod@gmail.com, or you can reach us on social media @englandrugbypod. And we will no doubt catch you again midweek to discuss what the team will look like for next Saturday, back at HQ against Ireland. We'll catch you then.